Thank you all for joining this webinar on open pedagogy. We will be introducing our two panelists in just a moment. We wanted to just first give you a little bit of background on the Open Pedagogy webinar series, which is co-sponsored by SUNY and the Open Education Consortium. This is a webinar series that has been going on for the past month or so and will continue until the end of April. If you missed any previous webinars, you can find them, recordings to those webinars, under bit.ly/open pedagogy webinars. And we hope that you will go take a look at the webinars that have already happened, and you can see the recordings there. And also sign up for the remaining two webinars, which after today's webinar will include a student panel on open pedagogy and then a panel on removing barriers. So I wanted to turn this over to our co-host, the Open Education Consortium, to introduce our panelists and tell you a little bit more about their organization. Susan?
Super. Thank you, Mary Lou. I appreciate it. And we're really excited to be hosting, co-hosting this with SUNY. I'd like to introduce Robert and Eric. Robert I know very well, and I'm really excited that he was able to join our Open Pedagogy webinar series. And Eric, they both are from Fontys in the Netherlands, and they're going to be sharing a personal product that they have launched and go into a little bit more depth into their example of open pedagogy. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Robert and Eric, for the next 30, 45 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Well, first some background about our institution. We are talking about well, the Fontys University of Applied Sciences, the School of ICT, which is located in two different places in the southern part of the Netherlands. Eindhoven, well known for their high-tech region. Philips has started in Eindhoven with their light bulbs. It's more than a century ago. And the current ASML, which is a world market leader in stepping, wafer stepping machines for producing computer chips. So we are actually have our School of ICT program, a bachelor ICT program, located in a high-tech region here in the Netherlands. We offer a 4-year bachelor program, and we currently have about 3,500 students based on 2 campuses in the southern part of the Netherlands, of which 800 is in our international English stream, where apart from some students from the Netherlands, they are coming from all over the world. The main part from the eastern part of Europe, Bulgaria and Romania. And we are campus-based. We offer campus-based education. And well, we are working in a field which is developing very fast. So our program was challenged by our environment to provide our students with the right knowledge and also the right skills to become both an ICT professional, but also become a critical citizen. And so we therefore are experimenting for many years now with using openly available learning materials and pedagogical approaches to search for solutions for this challenge. And one of these developments is an approach which we call open innovation. And although the concept of open pedagogy is still under debate, we believe that one can take this approach with this label. And my colleague Erik Slaat is the founding father of this approach, and I will give the floor to him to tell you more about what we are doing here. Erik.
Thank you. We promise our students something that's in the field rather remarkable. We promise them they can become anything in IT, which means when there's a new development, we have to act very swiftly. And in this open approach, we can actually, if there's something new, we have it in the curriculum within a week. Besides that, we can offer every student a personal curriculum, where he or she can determine what they want to do, how they want to do it, in which form, and even how they are graded for it. And we started this journey about 20 years ago already. Geez, I'm getting old. I was creating a new curriculum for interaction design, and one of the starting points we took was that education should happen in context to be meaningful. And if education in context happens, then you have to look at the context. And the context is what's happening in the world around you. And especially in IT, changes are massive and constantly. And this means we have to look into that. And what we see is that there is massive technology-driven change happening. So you can ask yourself, if you give students a curriculum which is pinpointed for 4 years, and say if you start in this curriculum after 4 years, you will have this base set of knowledge. Basically, you're telling students that he is not up to date after 4 years. So we have a curriculum that's constantly changing. And when we were designing it, we took this as a starting point. We should prepare students for unknown future challenges, to perform in environments that aren't even here yet. And to do that, we were talking to, in the Netherlands, we have something called Council for Government Questions. Yes, something. I don't know what the exact translation is, but it's a council that the government turns to for them to solve questions in a more academic way. And one of the questions they asked this group of people is produce a booklet in 2010 which will tell us what we have to do to be valuable in Europe in 2020. And they came with a book that's called The Learning Economy. And I didn't care much for the economy part, but the part where they described the employee of the future was really interesting. And they just described this field where people will change jobs often, which we see happen at the moment, but also that they need another set of skills. And we translated it in 3 competences, which is leading in what we are doing. We think that our students should be made adaptive and resilient and have a high learning capability, that they should be innovative, because if they are not, we are sure that machines are going to take their jobs. So everything from which there are examples, machines are going to do. And you have to do it in a responsible way. And Robert touched onto this on his intro. And then the question came, can we educate for such a responsive, resilient professional which can find its way into an uncertain future? And can we prepare them with yesterday's didactical system? And then we went looking into the system and see what it means. And I usually use this metaphor. Education has the tendency to structure things until there's not more or less certain what the pieces mean to each other. So you're looking here at a painting like Van Gogh. And who can tell me that if I'm working for 2 hours on red with my class, that after 2 hours I'm done with red? Maybe I need 10 minutes, maybe I need 3 days. And after 2 hours I have to switch to orange or to yellow, which is very expensive in my head. So we didn't think it would suit a responsive professional and make people resilient and adaptive in some profession. So basically we said challenges. The challenge is that schedules are disrupting learning. So we basically quit doing schedules and courses at that moment. I will look into it how we fix this. What we were aiming for is that we could give every student his own personal curriculum, so that the talents that students have will be best suited. And we could do it because the change in learning environments has become massive since 2010, and it basically has to do with IT. This is a picture everybody knows. And what it means is that at this time, at least in our part of the world, everybody has massive use of IT. To 150 students just to see what happens, and I came on a lot of places and I saw hardly any IT penetration anywhere except from our School of ICT. And if we look at it now, everybody has a laptop, everybody has a cell phone, and everybody has an internet connection. Beside that, going too fast, we saw that, back one slide, that information has become a commodity very rapidly. Well, Robert knows far more about this than I do. So stuff like Wikipedia, for example, massively good. But especially in IT, there's so much online material that's very valuable that we are now at the point that we don't have any books anymore for the students. There is no literalized, how do you call it?
Yeah. Mandatory literature.
Yeah, we don't have it. And what we find is that the learning environment is what the student uses, and use IT as his learning environment. And with it, he has the best library in the world with him, he has his tooling, and he has his network with him. And from a professional view, this is what we ask students to do in a company setting. They're going to get a problem. They have to use their literature, they have to use their tooling, and they have to use their network to get it done. And what we know is that the format will change dramatically. New means will come, and they will all have access to it. And we know that students will use anything for learning, whether we like it or not. I come in places where it's prohibited to use Wikipedia. You can't forbid a student to use it. They will use it. And we know they can. And if you look at a situation like this, basically, if you're giving the student a written test and you forbid them to use their means, you're robbing them of the situation that is lifelike. In real life, they were asked to use their tooling and their network, etc. So at this point, we also started to get rid of written tests. What does it mean if there is so much online which a student can use? If you look at this this pyramid, it's often used for describing learning, and it goes from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. And if you look at the action most teachers take in their classroom, it's 80–90% about information sharing. And if all this information is available, everybody can digest it in their own pace. And as a teacher, you can move up in the pyramid and go more on the knowledge side of things. Given this is true, we started looking at what this means, and I use this way of describing it. Knowledge is an iceberg, and the tip that sticks above the water is everything you can find. It lives in books, it lives online, and it's very explicit. There's a lot to be found underwater, and that's a tacit knowledge, the knowledge that lives in people. And we shifted teaching to the meaningful dialogue which you can handle if you open up the tacit knowledge that's in your team. From there on, we started looking at talent development and what should a student learn, and we noticed that a student is like a puppet on a rope, and it will move how you assess. So the student will always do what you asked him to get good grades. We have a competence-based model, and a good competence description should be consistent. So if I give a twang on the right side, the left side should move. It should be meaningful. And if you take a look at how people develop themselves, if they're in the right context, which is described by competences, it looks more or less like this. Most stuff you're really good at because you're in the right place, but not everything. And everybody has this experience. The courses you couldn't come past or what you find hard or not meaningful or whatever. And interestingly, what's not going too well gets all the attention. And then the question is, how important is it that some stuff you aren't that good in? Here in the Netherlands, it's a 5.5, which is a mastery.
Yeah,
what is it? A C?
C minus.
C minus. What you're basically telling people is that you don't need to know half of it. And if you have compensating courses, then it even gets worse. You can get an F and have 2 compensated courses. And so what we're basically telling them, it's not that important. Besides that, if you only have to know which half is it? It's hardly ever defined. Is it 20 of the 30 multiple choice questions? What is it? And basically what's happening, if you're putting a lot of attention on the flaws and things that don't work, energy will drop at where students are really good at. And this is just the opposite of what you want to achieve. So what we started doing is called the strength-based approach. We started pushing at where they were really good. And we could do that because we have different approaches for every student. This means they get very confident in what they're good at, and if the competence framework is consistent, they will lift what they're not that good at automatically because they're very ambitious to raise the top of their what they're doing. And they become also aware of their incompetences. So they can shift on it, and that's part of being an adaptive professional. Besides that, we saw that assessments have certain side effects. I started a program in 2003 called Delta, and it was more or less for the students who wanted to do more and could do more and were more eager. And what I basically did was give them exemption for everything, and just give them real life challenges and say, just pick the challenges you like and develop yourself, and I will coach you, and you will notice it will go right. And in the first semester, they were all very skeptical. Am I doing the right thing? Am I going to pass? And after a semester, they noticed they passed. And then it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The students in this program were beginning to perform better and better and better. And it took me a long time to understand it, but one time, I think it was 2014, I ran into a Google talk of a guy named David Rock. And he was a neurologist, and he was basically telling why the Freaky Friday model is working so good. And we all know Freaky Fridays was devised by the Club van de Geeltjes. 3M, I think. 3M. 3M in 1948, very long ago. Philips adapted it. That gave us the CD player, for example. Google adapted it. And he had a long talk about it. And somewhere in this talk said, well, why does it work? It works because it's safe. And then he tells a story about if you're thinking you're the boss about what your head is doing, think again. The subconscious is boss. And it reacts between flow and fear. And when flow happens, it takes time to build up. But if you're there, magic things happen. It's so safe that your subconscious starts to think with your consciousness. It means your consciousness gets all the room it needs to perform best. A fear response, on the other hand, your subconscious takes over and it squeezes your consciousness down to almost nothing. Dave Rock says, well, it's like your subconscious is the universe, and your consciousness is a square or cubic meter, and if you're in the flow situation, the universe thinks with you. But if you're in a fear situation, a cubic meter gets compressed to a cubic centimeter. You can't think anymore. And that was the moment I also understood that blackouts when making tests are real. Some people are so scared, they simply can't perform. And that's really unfair, getting people in the worst situation they can be in. So we started looking at ways of testing that has this model in it, make it safe for the student. And from there we headed on to personal curricula, which you can't have tests that are the same for everybody, because in principle everybody can do something different. And it means we had to give students ownership of their curriculum in a massive way. So they have ownership over content, over pace, over level, over style, their own data. I won't go into that one, that's another story, that's a quantified student. Their own didactics, but they're also their own testing criteria. Well, how did we do it? We started looking at the workflow of a student, and what we see a lot is a workflow, if you set effort against time, that looks like this. a written test at the end of the pipe, and all the effort goes before the test. And this is very recognizable for lots of people. I, for example, studied this way. Who didn't, yeah. Which gives the something like I've been trained as a professional test maker, and making tests isn't a profession. You don't want this behavior. You want it more like this. And we found that students, when we talk to them, what do they ask from teachers? They ask inspiration and structure. Those are the two most important ones. And because we couldn't give courses anymore, we said, well, we don't do inspiration sessions, and that these are the only planned lesson activities, which are also not mandatory. And students plan their own curriculum for the semester. And that's why something special happened. We found out that how a student plans is based on how we assess them. So basically, with an assessment, you have a very powerful tool to guide students through their course. From then we started looking at making assessments meaningful, part of the learning experiments, and very precise. And this is something we call assessment as learning. And it can be done. How did we implement it? What we did basically was giving the student all the feedback he needs. So every student gets feedback when he needs it. This means some students have 30 to 50 feedback points during a semester, and others may have 5 or 6, just what they need. And we let the students record their feedback themselves. We created tooling around that we also can give some kind of a taste of how the student is doing, and that's called a smiley rating. So every feedback point, the student gets a smiley rating from a smiley, everything's doing good, super smiley, you're doing really, really, really good, or the crying face. We call it a huilie. And it gives a pulse, and it's called feed pulse, so we can see from every student how he's doing, but also the students know it. And this is the first part of making it safe, but also making it meaningful and part of the learning experience. The second thing we did was the assignments students make, they can turn them in as much as they like. Because if you're doing that, you can become part of the experience of solving the challenge from the assignment and giving the students feedback, which is very, very meaningful. Usually when students get an assignment, they only turn it in when they think it's good enough to be graded with mastery. This is something you have to learn, students. They're not used to it. Basically what happens is that you see students a lot, and it gets like this curve, and what you basically see is the top of the curve. And there are bad days and there are good days, but they're graphed out. So it's very precise. From there on, we go to this personal curricula. How did we fix it? At this moment, we have about 120 partner companies. These are in the Partner of Education program. And they are stakeholders of open challenges. So these partners pose challenges on which our students can work, and they can basically fulfill their learning question. Students can also themselves pose challenges for other students. This way we have startups, for example. And based on these challenges, the student writes his own assignments. We do that in a learning environment. So these assignments will become a personal portfolio, which is also validated by the companies, by the coaches, and by their peers. Based on these assignments, they create their own criteria, and they define the criterion good. Not the C-, but the level good. And based on this, we take our competence framework, which is like a building blocks kind of situation, and they get the key performance indicators from our competence framework, and they also attach it to these assignments. So this means we don't need any grades anymore, because we can show the competence growth of every student if you grade the assignments on these key performance indicators. How does it work? We use open educational resources to fulfill these assignments. There's always an expert looking. Can be from a company or can be an internal expert. And every student has at least 2 coaches who coach him through these assignments, which he describes them or she describes themselves. And all these assignments put together forms a validated portfolio for the students, which they use to get jobs or internships or whatever. This means we have to give the student ownership of his own personal course. And in this course, which is basically a learning management system, we are using Canvas, he creates his own assignments, creates his own rubrics on which he's graded, and creates his own learning questions. And at the end of every semester, he writes a competence document in which he collects all the proof linked to their personal course, and he's turning this in the general guiding course, and that's the only thing students are graded upon. And the grade is simply pass or fail. So a student masters a semester or not. And this means we can give every student their own competence profile. If we look at all the assignments a student has done, and this is the graphs you see, that's basically a representation of our competence framework. And these are 2 students which are doing the same set of open courses, but each developed completely different from the other. And without understanding how these graphs work, you can see that they are completely different. In the right top angle, you also see the feed pulse working and the rubrics they create for their own assignments. And what makes this different than the other, we can have a complete audit trail of all the interventions, feedback, and grading for every student, and also see on which competences they have worked. And what we basically do is giving them a lot of freedom and let go, and that's where it gets difficult. Most students think this is very, very hard to do, or students, teachers. Let the student be in the lead. The student is owner of the structure, the student is owner of his own curriculum, and the only rule we use is you have to show enough competence growth. I think I'm still in the time. Yeah. So, room for questions. No questions?
All right, we want to invite anyone, any participant who has questions to please type in the chat window, and we'll make sure that Robert and Eric hear the questions. In the meantime, I actually have one question for you. Did this switch in the way that you instruct and assess students have any impact on the way that the Department of Education accredits your university?
Yes, actually it did. We were accredited excellent as the only and also saw that our work field was very pleased with our students. Yeah, they were impressed, luckily. What we found is that the students also started to perform better. So the graduating students in this form of education are doing better. And actually, it isn't rocket science. They're doing the things they like, they're motivated to do, and they're very eager to become better in. So it's really logical.
Did you have contact with the accreditation people as you were going through the process, or once the transformation was finished?
Yes, we did. What we did was in the Netherlands you have these accreditations for, and the group of people who did accreditation the time before this, it's about 8 years ago. 7 years ago. we asked them to be a critical friend, because you can be accredited by the same group of people 2 times in a row. So we knew we have to have a different committee, and we asked them to be a critical friend in this whole process. The same we did with our partner companies who were really looking into this kind of education. I can advise that to everybody. Let the accreditation people look at you, because they're going to see the flaws you don't see anymore. Yeah, no questions?
Yep.
We have a question that says, what are some of the examples of challenges students have picked from, and what platforms do you use to create the competence profile?
The competence profile, well, we basically use Canvas from Instructure as our learning management system. And it has an open API, so the competence profile was something we did ourselves, but Instructure is looking into it because they see it as a nice add-on from their platform. So it's basically an open learning management system which you can use for free if you like. There's a free for teacher, so you can get experience with it. Challenges which students pick from, they vary a lot. Right now I'm coaching a number of groups. One is working, there's second-year students, from which I'm giving the example now. One of them is working on, group is working on more humanly robot user interaction with people, for robots who are going to ride through hospitals. One group is working for basically a project of mine. It's called Quantified Student. This is where we give the data back to the student, but try to use artificial intelligence to give the student nudges to increase their learning performance. So that's what we call it, Runkeeper for Learning. Another one is working for a big pop festival in the Netherlands, and they're going to do all the interactions in the main stage. And make sure they have enough in that festival to get content. And these are mostly media type of assignments. In the exam phase last year, I had a group who was doing something they call Bike Shift, and it's just a startup company. They created the hardware and software for a small device which you can attach to loan bikes, which are very popular in the Netherlands. There are 400,000 or 500,000 out there. And if you attach this small device to this bike, the bike collects where you've been, what the pollution status is, what the status of the road is, etc. And it gathers this information for the government to improve on things. And basically they get a discount on the bike, and this device is attached to it. So these are a number of example challenges.
They didn't hear the platform very clearly. Can you repeat what platform you're using for the profile?
Yeah, the platform is Canvas from Instructure. And there is a free for teacher version. So if you look up Instructure, or you look up Canvas from Instructure on Google, it will pop out.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? If not, I will say thank you to Robert and Eric. Appreciate your time. This was super interesting. Appreciate the information, and this recording will be posted on the SUNY website. We will also have links to it on the OEC website, and we'll be sharing those also by social media. So thanks everyone. Thank you, SUNY. Appreciate co-hosting, and Robert and Eric, thanks again.
You're welcome. Bye.